Welcome, beloved, to my diary. I'm Tahtahme, and today I've decided we're gonna just hop right into the Kyle Vaush intersectionality mess. I meant to jump in a couple days ago. I'm a little late, but I see nothing wrong with hopping into the mud pit late. I'm just saying, it's for me. It's for me. Okay, so at any rate, keep in mind this is gonna be long-winded as hell, I feel like, because it just feels like this is like it started here, and then this person said something, and then this person said something, and then this person said something, and at this point I'm just like, let's just deep dive into it. So basically it all started when the CIA, yes, decided they were going to release a very cringe ad that word vomited out like a whole resume of this person's life and lifestyle and who they are. And essentially, yeah, it was just embarrassing. And this type of thing would be embarrassing in any setting. When you go anywhere and somebody you don't like really know just word vomits a whole bunch of things out to you, you're just like, whoa, like, who asked? And if it's not like a commercial that's like pointedly at something, she was like, y'all, I am a woman of color, I am bisexual, I am cisgender, I am, the fighting the patriarchy, and therefore I'm intersectional, and a bunch of just stuff. It was stuff on stuff, and it wasn't a very long ad, so she got a lot in there in a very short amount of time. And it felt very unprofessional, might I say, because it feels like they could have hired somebody who could have written that out a little better, maybe a little more naturally, maybe hired a second actor, they could converse, I'm not sure. But it's just like, I'm not sure what they could have done to word vomit all that to try to attract people who know of the terms but are not about that lifestyle or not about that activism, is I'm guessing who this is about. And I found it very offensive also, might I add, because I remember the people who were out there normalizing terms like this, the people who were out here in the streets trying to be activists, those people were like raided and swatted and put on lists and, kept an eye on back, a decade ago. And now it's like they're just out here just using these words in ads. And, basically this is what people said. They didn't say all that, but they did say they're basically co-opting and this is cringe and it's embarrassing. And that was basically Kyle's, it was a rather dry, take. It just wasn't his best. So I stopped watching his video pretty early on because it just felt like he was ranting and I just didn't think anything of it anymore. Then the Vanguard posts this video about like Vaush calling out Kyle about his take about the CIA, and I was like, okay. I was trying to think back to the video. It just seemed like your average takes to me. There was a few things that I thought were a little silly about it, but I was like, I think I had kind of zoned out about the video when I was doing some other things, so I couldn't even remember it. So I click on that. I'm not really a Vaush fan, so anything I see of him, it's usually through somebody else. And I just, it's just, I don't have time, I don't have time for people who argue about like their right to say the N-word, their right to have child porn, their right to like, I don't his terrible takes about kids on the border. It's just like, who's got time for that? There's grown folks out here I could be supporting, which I try to do. So I'm just like, okay, what's this issue? What could this guy possibly have to say? So it's not even really his take. I guess on Twitter, some people got a hold of some clips. So one of the clips was pretty funny to me that was being played. It was like Kyle gets into this kind of thing where he's mad about the language being used, not just because it's being co-opted and like mangled in its use in this sentence, but because he's like, nobody talks like this. He's like, maybe like somewhere in a back room, the liberals, blah, blah, blah. But then he's like saying words like patriarchy, intersectionality, cisgender. And I thought that was funny because I thought to myself, I swear to you right now, I could go on my Facebook and find somebody with a public post that says one or two of those words. I think maybe I could hit the trifecta. So I went onto my Facebook, and sure enough, I found a public post where the first two sentences read, in a patriarchy, wanting cishet man friends that bad just means to me you don't know how to be a good friend to women. Those friendships are miles more fulfilling, but women who dick-centered as hell don't know how to be genuine friends with people who would relate to their experience and provide them a kinship they will never get with a hetero man, even one who genuinely loves them. So I thought that this was actually the perfect one too, because not only did I find it like 3 scrolls down, but because it shows the more candid way that like these words are used. You know, we do use the word intersectional in everyday conversation, like in a Facebook post. Like that happens. That's real. I was like, I see these words anytime I go on my Facebook. I see takes like that, or, you know, maybe a totally different opposite take, but using the same exact terminology. And so I just found it funny because I was like, this kind of shows why we need to have more voices of color that are not only like, we have a couple, you know, it's like we have Tim Black, we have Justin Jackson, I think Nico is Black too, I'm not sure, y'all, I'm missing some people out, but like we don't have very many Black voices. And I say Black because the word intersectionality was coined by a Black woman, Kimberly Crenshaw, and it was popularized by a Black woman, Audre Lorde. And so I'm like, it just shows that, like, you know, we need to have a voice too that's centered, that's not just people with 100,000, 10,000 followers, but we need people like who have 1 million followers. Like, I don't understand why everyone's so centered around, like, you know, Pac-Man and, you know, all these other people, Sam Cedar and TYT, because they have like pretty mild takes and they have a lot of excuses for the Blue Party, for things not like being timely, or for not pressing our progressives to, you know, have a progressive agenda and really fight for that progressive agenda as people are literally actively dying while they go to work, while they try to stay home and live in their space and navigate trying to pay rent, navigate some people having to leave the house and all this other stuff. Like, we're out here like this. If it's not now, push comes to shove, when? And, you know, I've noticed a lot of like talk about this kind of general strike that's happening out there where people just aren't returning to work because they're being offered way lower wages with way less benefits, and, you know, they're out here dying on the front lines. But I guess that's like another story. But anyways, like, it's just crazy to me that we are being led by a bunch of people who clearly come from more affluent backgrounds mostly. Like, it doesn't seem to me like we've got these people who are actually struggling. Like, somebody I've read said that Vaush comes from like a fairly wealthy background, so it's really bizarre to me that, you know, we're having these people again who, you know, we uplift these people who don't understand the struggle or haven't lived it, or, you know, whatever, and it's getting really tiring to see this. So anyways, Vaush, apparently he touches on that a little bit. He starts to touch on the fact that he's not keeping in mind and centering someone other than himself, which is a real conversation that can be had. Is, you know, the knee-jerk reaction to center all politics from your perspective and forget that other people have perspectives. You know, even the wealthy have a perspective, right? But I don't care about their perspective. My point is that I just have to always keep in mind that they do have a perspective. And I think Vaush could have really had that conversation where he was like, let's, you know, talk about centering people of color, or trying to, when we have these conversations, or, you know, spreading knowledge about these things or the background of these things or something. But he didn't go there. It was very odd. He decided to go into this direction of like, we need to critique the right more. We need to be critiquing Tucker Carlson more, which I feel is not really necessary. Like, I feel like people are doing it enough, you know, his most outrageous things people address. But for the most part, I feel like, you know, it's almost like Tucker goes home and just writes out the most outrageous, crazy ass batshit things he can think of, and then goes out there to spew because he just knows anyone left of center is going to be like, what the fuck? And I feel like compelled to fact check him. So I just feel like he plays games. He kind of does that same thing like with, Trump. It's just tiring to have to see people to, oh, here we go again. What crazy things is he lying about now? What's he doing again? And so I felt like, and then not to mention the fact that Kyle's made more videos than Vaush about this subject. It all kind of leads me to feel like, oh, and then also not only that, but the fact that Vaush clearly watches Kyle. So anybody who does watch him on a normal basis wouldn't assume off the top that like, oh, like from this clip Kyle's gone rogue. Like, no, like he's a pretty genuine individual. He's not trying to come at it from that perspective. So you can give him like you have faith, watching somebody like that just because they admitted something doesn't mean that they now believe in like the total worst of that situation. So it felt disingenuous for someone like Vaush to be looking at that and then totally read into it the same way strangers on Twitter did, instead of to come out and be like, I think he probably should have included this and he probably needs to since he's getting bigger or something like that. But it's like that all of this together leads me to feel like Vaush did this in a way to kind of just get attention. And, I feel like he realizes that he doesn't really have these ideas and that there's other people kind of coming up behind his heels who are really dedicated, who do live this life. So they are very emotionally dedicated to it, emotionally able to articulate it better than someone like him who isn't, like I said, able to live that life or even trying to go into the trenches to witness that life, to give a voice to it. It's not really something that he's about. He's also spends a lot of his time, like I said, having bad takes, defending those, readdressing them later. And I think, he's really stagnated over the last like month and a half, 2 months. He's just got his solid fan base and he's just kind of has that. But then Kyle goes ahead and he offers him like a whole ass like gift. And he's like, come on to Crystal Kyle and Friends. And I'm like, great. More of an audience for this guy. And the Vanguard tried to argue like, oh well, I'm all for people spreading ideas. Like, yeah, I'm all for people spreading ideas when they have them, when they've got something to say, when they've studied into this and lived something and done something, and it's not just them kind of shit talking online all the time. I feel like it's just like they handed him something I don't feel like he really deserves. And it just, again, it's just the same way I feel like AOC takes up space that a real progressive who really actually wants to raise hell in her position would, they could be in that position, and she takes up space by like being on Vogue and like acting like she's hardcore, but in reality she's got mildly centrist views anywhere else in the world. So it just feels like Vaush is about to kind of do something similar there, just take up space where he's not really like an activist like that. He's not really a leftist. He's not a great thinker with some, novel ideas that everybody just needs to hear what he has to say. He's a good debater. And the thing with that is like, I think a lot of people, they get really swindled by that. And I remember back in high school, I always won the debates and everybody would always be like, whoa, like, girl, what? Like, even the person that I was like debating against would be acting the fool, and I was like, you guys, like, I had no idea what I was just talking about. Why did you like get intimidated by this? I just waxed poetic about like nothing and lied, and yet you all fell for it because of the way I spoke. And so it's like, I want people to remember debating is a really great skill to have. It gets you through things, it convinces people of things, but it can be dangerous when people are uplifting someone just because they have that skill, when in reality they don't have the stuff to back it up. They don't have the foundation to back it up. And I haven't seen it from Vaush. And from the first time I bumped into him, I saw something that just disgusted me, and every single time since, it's just been a mess. I've seen his messy takes. It's just, and then especially getting to see them from a real socialist perspective on Socialism for All's channel, it's just like it's so eye-opening for me, the ways that I was just kind of rubbed the wrong way by things that I was seeing him say, but then now I can understand them a little better. So it's just like a mess. Anyway, what else? did I want to make? Oh, there was also this weird random moment where Kyle, like when he was ragging on the terms that he was like, nobody uses these except maybe in a back room, like some white liberals, or saying the word intersectional. I'm like, I don't know. But at any rate, he's like, or like patriarchy. I'm not sure what word he's trying to say. Like, black women don't like the patriarchy either, honey. At any rate, he gets into this whole thing about Latinx, and he's like, look at this article. Only 3% of Americans use Latinx, or maybe it was 3% of I don't know. I don't know exactly what it was, but I think that's actually maybe when I zoned back in and shut his video off, because I was like, this is foolish. This is absolute foolishness, because it's like, what does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with the can of beans, dude? If back in the day, back in the 90s, the word cisgender was being used by like 3% of the population. We'll call them scientists. And it was probably 3% of the 3% of it. You know what I'm saying? It was like probably a small percentage of scientists were even using that word. Small percentage of doctors were using that word. But they still had it, and they still need it. Just because it's not popular doesn't mean a word isn't necessary or can't be used or can't be made up. It just like, it weirds me out when people get mad about like languages being manipulated, bent, changed to accommodate the times. Like, I don't know if that's like the black person in me, but it's just like, I love slang. I love the fact that like my people have dialects all over the world. Wherever we landed, we fucked the colonizer languages up, because that's all they are. They are colonizer languages. That is all Spanish is. That is all English is. Fuck the queen. Fuck those languages. Fuck those languages up. That's what I say to that. And I say, like, if there's just a small percentage of the Latinx community who's like, oh, we feel like using this word, and we feel like using it to describe us, I don't see what it hurts. I don't see why everyone's just so confused. Like, y'all learned how to say plenty of X words back in preschool. They drilled it with you. They had little songs that had little words for every letter of the alphabet. I know we practiced. So I just don't understand people. Like, what was his point there? Like, we still need words. Like, there's a whole bunch of words somewhere in a botany book that ain't nobody used except a few people. And guess what? They're necessary. What was he going on about? My final real thought about this is, I also hope that they're not using this language to attract the next generation, because, you know, there are people who wouldn't have seen the stuff going down on the internet like years ago. They're not some people who will perhaps be aware of things that were going on pre-internet. They're not people who, you know, it's just one of those things where if enough time passes, people just stop questioning because they just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. And that's like kind of just something that our government does. And so I just like, I hope like no young people are falling for it, but I'm sure they are, and somebody did, and somebody out there is like trying to make a difference and about to go down like the pipeline of the empire. Let's just take a moment of silence to mourn the loss. May your ancestors and spirit guides be with you at every crossroads, and I will see you next time.